Hi everyone, this is Nina and Abigail with Rent Mason Bees. Today we have Abigail again back from Sacramento. She has been visiting all of our hosts that have been volunteering for our joint project with UC Davis. Today we are at Tiara's house and we are sampling the last set of straws for the pollen. And Abigail is going to show us how she samples those loaves.
Okay, so I'm going to be pulling pollen out of these tubes to run a genetic analysis on them in order to figure out what the bees are eating. So what I do is cut the tube from about halfway down so I don't disrupt their nesting too much, and just take part of the pollen provision out. Try to be pretty gentle, not to disturb the bees. Okay. Then I can open up the nest here. And you can see that these bees have been very busy. So she builds a mud wall at the back and then collects loads of pollen for her baby bees. That's called a pollen loaf or pollen provision. They're quite big. Then the mother bee will lay an egg right on top of that loaf and then build the next mud wall and keep doing that down the whole length of the tube. You can actually see one of the eggs really clearly right here. It's that clearish white oval on top of the pollen loaf. So that egg will hatch into a larva that will eat all of the pollen loaf left by the mother and then eventually spin a cocoon to pupate and become an adult bee. So when I take the pollen sample, I try to be very careful not to disrupt the egg. And I just take a little bit, maybe if I can get it. There we go. And that's really all I need to be able to run the analysis. And I will close this back up and leave the bees to continue nesting.
And what are you going to analyze with that pollen that you're taking?
So we do something called DNA meta barcoding, which is exactly what you'd think of with a barcode at the grocery store. So every species in the world has a unique barcode. So we will take this pollen, send it off to a genetics lab, and they will associate the DNA inside the pollen with the plant species.
And then are you going to be counting the male to female ratio when you're looking at these, when you get the tubes back? You're going to come back and collect these tubes in June? You're going to put this back now?
Yeah. So when I come back in June, everyone's bees should pretty much be finished up nesting for the season, and I'm hoping to find out how successful overall everyone's nests were. So I'm going to look at things like how many males and females were laid inside of the tubes, how many eggs were made, how big the brood cells are inside of the tubes, things like that to determine how successful the bees were. So I'm going to put these back into our tote until June, when I'll come back and look at all the things I was talking about for nest success later on. And thank you so much for joining me.